Well, we may only be one episode in, but it is clear that Mr. Robot is not pulling any punches with easily one of its most shocking and brutal episodes yet.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for the season premiere of the final season of Mr. Robot, Season 4, Episode 1, Unauthorized, just called Unauthorized. There's no, web link or anything at the end of it because we've clearly moved past that, and holy shit, what a premiere this was. I mean, wow. Look, Mr. Robot's always been a show that is very intense, and yes, it always does deliver some really shocking moments, but I was not prepared for the level of just dread and just hopelessness that this premiere really gave us. I mean, Season 3, the way things were wrapping up, it seemed like we were kind of done with these characters at their lowest point, but this episode, if this episode's any clear indication, we're only just at the cusp of it. I mean, it's only beginning, and we're really starting to see these characters suffer in just a really tragic way, but one that I think is really moving the show in a very interesting direction. And honestly, guys, it's episodes like this that really make me thankful that I've caught up on this show, because this is the kind of episode that I want to go talk about in length. I have a lot to discuss for sure, so we're just going to get into it right now. So normally with these reviews, I like to go plot by plot and everything that really happened, but with this episode, it's very hard to talk about it without just discussing the way things really start off here. But the way things started off here was definitely not the way I was expecting, because we actually start right from where that Price and Angela conversation left off. You know, she now knows that he's his father. She also knows that she's been played, and we get to see basically what follows. And it's a horribly shocking moment. I mean, we have this moment where Angela, she's ready to just walk away. She doesn't care that Price is telling her, like, there's nothing I can do for you, you gotta live with this. She isn't backing down. She wants to make sure that White Rose pays for this. She knows that White Rose is inventing something, and she wants to try to use that to her advantage, and you can just see the look on Price's face. The second that she says, there's nothing you can do to stop me, you can tell that he's being sincere. If there's any confirmation that Price was being sincere about all of this, it's this moment right here. You see he has this genuine concern for her. You see that he is really worried about what she's going to do next, and you don't really know what exactly is going to happen, but you see her, she looks at something, you can see that she has this shocked look on her face, and she tells him that she wants him to just walk away, and we get this brutal shot of Price just walking away, and 6 minutes into this episode, Angela Moss is killed. I honestly couldn't believe it. The first time that I saw this, I was in complete disbelief. I was like, no, there's no way that they just killed Angela like that. But no, they did. And honestly, I'm not too upset about it. Yes, it's devastating. Yes, it's a very shocking death, and definitely not one I saw coming at all. But from a character perspective, it really does make a lot of sense. I mean, in the place Angela was in this show, she really was of no use to White Rose anymore. And, you know, the show has established that if, you know, White Rose uses someone, a character in the show, she uses them to their full advantage. But if they're of no use to her anymore, she will just get rid of them because they're of no use to her. And that's exactly the case for Angela. Angela was someone who she was able to manipulate, but you could tell that Angela was wavering. Angela now knows everything. Angela now knows that White Rose was lying to her. So because of that, White Rose has no choice but just to get rid of her, and it really does make a lot of sense. But we also know how much White Rose just absolutely despises Price and how much she loves seeing him suffer. Now, to be fair, she loves seeing a lot of people suffer, but Price especially, she will do whatever she can to just destroy him entirely. And we see how much this has shook him. He tells her, like, you know, he was really hoping that there was a way that he could have saved her and that, you know, he could have come to some kind of agreement. But White Rose basically has no remorse for this this whatsoever, says that there really was no choice, and doesn't really care about the fact that this was Price's daughter. But oh my god, Michael Cristofer in that scene where he's, you know, just slamming the vase down and things like that, and you can just see how enraged he is about this. He hates the fact that he had to tell her all of this, and also we find out that he was actually wearing a wire this entire time. So you have to be under the assumption that even though, yes, he was revealing all this stuff to her, he knew the full consequences of what could end up happening if she doesn't take his advice, if she doesn't listen to him and just backs off. But we know that similar to Elliot, Angela's just not that kind of person. Angela's not just going to stop doing something because it's easiest to do. Angela's not just going to live with it. She isn't going down without a fight. She's going to make sure that what she wants is what ends up getting done. She knows what White Rose is capable of, and she knows that White Rose is working on something, and she really does feel that she could have, you know, used that to her advantage. And because of that, that's unfortunately why Angela did have to be, you know, that's why Angela did have to be disposed of entirely. And it's obviously a very tragic moment. I was definitely not expecting for the show to go here, but it really does up the momentum in a great way. This shows that, yes, it is the final season. Nobody is truly safe. And really, this entire first 6 minutes really does, I think, set in tone what this final season is really going to be. Because especially for Elliot, who seemed like he was actually going on a good path, you know, he's now working for the first time in complete synchronicity with Mr. Robot. These two are on the same terms. You see them doing some espionage thing. They're trying to basically get information from this really just filthy and almost, I think they implied pedophilic mayor named this lawyer named Freddie, and basically who Jake Busey, I mean, brilliantly played this role. You saw how caught off guard he was, but then how terrified he was, and they're trying to do what they can to get information out of him. But again, because of the fact that they dropped the Dark Army's name, because of now everyone knowing what the Dark Army is truly capable of, unfortunately, it just doesn't work out with Freddy. He also ends up killing himself in the first 10 minutes, and the mission is a complete failure. And so because of this, you now see Elliot throughout this entire episode really thinking irrationally. He knows exactly what has happened. He knows what White Rose has done. He knows that White Rose has no remorse for this, and he is out for blood at this point. And Mr. Robot actually has to be the one to reel him in and get him to think rationally, which is not the dynamic we've seen before. And it's a really nice change of pace, I have to say. Up to this point, Mr. Robot's been the erratic one, and Elliot's been the one who makes the most level-headed decisions. But this time, it's switched. Mr. Robot is on the path where he does want them to take down the Dark Army, but he has a much more rational and pragmatic way of going about it, while Elliot, he isn't thinking very clearly at all. He is just doing, he's driven completely by his own emotions, and you really do see how much this death has affected him. I mean, White Rose went as far as to literally send him a picture of Angela's, Angela's brains being blown out. And you really do see how much this has just enraged Elliot in that way, but also how it's destroyed every other character. And yes, even though Angela is dead, her spirit really looms over this entire episode, and probably for the entire season. I mean, it's basically destroyed all of our characters. Darlene, for example, I really didn't know where she was going to go after that whole confrontation with Vera. Now, as far as this episode goes, we still don't have any confirmation what ended up happening there because we had a 2-month time jump. But I have to assume something did go on. But because of Angela's death, Darlene is now turning to drugs. She really has lost all sense of just, she's really lost herself completely, and she even wants to believe that Angela is still out there. She is now the one who is kind of in over her head. She's the one who, not necessarily is brainwashed, but she's in the position that Angela was, where she is deluded in that way. She's just not, she's just not in a good headspace, and the scene especially where Elliot is trying to tell her, no, Angela's dead, there's nothing we we can do. It's just, you really do feel that hopelessness that these characters are going through. And Rami Malek just acted the hell out of that scene because, again, there's nothing to hide at this point. He knows that there's absolutely nothing he can do to bring her back. And it's just really unfortunate because, as I've said before, Elliot is very much a problem solver. He will do whatever he can to make sure that, he doesn't stop until he has a solution. But he knows that there really is no solution here. They just have to simply accept her death. And Mr. Robot asked, should we show her the picture and things like that, but it's obvious that's not a good idea for Darlene. She's already very unhinged at this point. She's already just not herself. I mean, there's a scene later on in the episode where, she's with all these friends who are offering her drugs, and you really do see how knee-deep she's gotten into this. I mean, it's become a very serious problem, clearly, but she just lashes out at them, and you really do see the impact that Angela's death has had on her. And I think a big part of that is that Darlene knows that there's more she could have done, or at least I think she wishes that there's more she could have done, even though she tried to help out Angela when she was under the delusion that everything that happened didn't matter and that everyone was going to come back. Even though, yes, she tried to help her, I think Darlene wishes that she would have approached it differently. I think Darlene wishes that she would have been there more for Angela, and I think that's something that's going to eat away at her. And can you really blame Darlene? I mean, she's still lost basically everything. First it was Cisco. Cisco obviously was killed, and that definitely had an impact on her. Then she tried to get closer to Dom, even though the whole thing ended up being a whole ruse, and basically she ended up hacking her and things like that, so we know what ended up going on there. Angela really was that last person that Darlene had, and same with Elliot. That really could have kept them grounded, that really could have helped them out here, and now with her gone, you really do see how much it has just affected her entirely, and it's very tragic to see for sure, but I really am interested in seeing where Darlene is going to go. I really didn't know what was going to happen with her after the Season 3 finale, but now I'm even more intrigued. It's definitely going to be very hard to watch, and I honestly don't know if Darlene is going to be able to recover from this. And especially since Darlene has always been that person that Elliot can turn to, the person that could keep him grounded, and the fact that she's gone off the deep end and become basically just as fucked up as an individual as he has in that way, and really has gone towards substance abuse, you really do see how much this has affected Elliot. I mean, he's just in a place where he just, again, he's not thinking clearly, and he's at a point where he doesn't really care what ends up happening to him. And I love that Mr. Robot, it's gotten to a point where he's not even talking to us. Mr. Robot is doing the narration, even though he doesn't care. He doesn't care about us. He cares because he cares about Elliot, and he wants to make sure that Elliot is thinking clearly here. And the way that things do wrap up, you think that, obviously we knew Elliot wasn't going to die. We knew that's definitely not how it was going to end, but it was just a matter of where this was all really going. And where it ends up going, it does seem like it's going to go in a hopeful direction, because if Elliot doesn't have Darlene, he's now obviously lost Angela, who, even though, yes, those two were driving apart for a while, I think he was planning on trying to reel her back in. And I think if Angela had listened to Price, I think Elliot would have been able to reel her in that way. Obviously, Angela was never going to do that, but let's just say if she lived, I do think she would have probably teamed up with Elliot to take down White Rose and things like that. But again, White Rose knew that that would have just been one more adversary for her, and she can't afford that at the moment. She wants to make sure that things keep going her way. And again, it just shows how much of a genius White Rose really is, but also just how maniacal she really is, and how unstoppable she really is in that way. And again, we've seen that throughout a lot of the show, but I think especially now, it's never been clearer just how much of a threat White Rose really is. And again, because of all this, if Elliot doesn't have them, who's he going to turn to? None other than Philip Price himself. Yes, Price is now going to team up with Elliot, and I love this idea. I can't wait to see the way this is going to go, and look, I envision that Price probably knew the White Rose wanted Elliot dead. I mean, in the beginning of this episode, she's having this conversation with her new confidant that is replacing Grant and things like that, and I think that she had this deal with Price, so, like, Price can live if he kills Elliot, so I think he wants White Rose to think that Elliot is dead, but in reality, he's going to be teaming up with him. I'm not entirely sure the way that's going to turn out, but it does a lot for Price as a character. The idea that these two are going to be teaming up, and Price is going to be leaving E-Corp, and now he's on his own. It shows what this reveal was really all about. This reveal was never about trying to strengthen the relation between Angela and Price and getting us to understand it more. Yes, it did do that, but really, it was about getting us to really see Price as a human being, because up to that point, he was nothing but just this aggressive, constantly, you know, just someone who was very aggressive, someone who was very short-sighted in that way, and someone who was ahead of a powerful corporation. That's how we saw him. But this season, because he's vulnerable now, we're really seeing him as a real person, and I really love where that is headed. And the idea of these two teaming up, I think is a really compelling idea that is not something that I would have expected them to do, but I'm very excited to see the way they approach that for sure. But aside from all of that, there still are quite a few things to talk about, mainly the stuff with Dom and Terrell. Terrell, there's not a ton to talk about here, but the direction he's going especially, I was very surprised by. I thought for sure he'd be going in the direction of a downfall, and I do think he definitely is, but just not the way I was expecting. Essentially, because of the fact that 5-9 was reversed, Terrell is the one who is now taking all the credit. Everyone is now seeing him as this hero. Everyone thinks that he's this great guy, and Terrell knows that he hasn't done anything. He hasn't played a part in any of this. All he knows is that 5-9 has been reversed, and he has to do what he can to play the part, but you can already see this is starting to affect him, and I think it just stems back to what Price told him, where that CTO position is worthless, and that's everything that Terrell has wanted, and at this point, he doesn't really think much of himself. You can tell. I think he needs to do some soul searching for sure, but he also knows that he needs to be that lackey to, you know, the Dark Army in that way, and, you know, one of many lackeys to them, and you can see how that he's really starting to crack under pressure, but not nearly as much as Dom, who, holy shit, I mean, I said in my Season 3 review that I don't think Dom is making it past this season, but I think we have even bigger indication that she's going to die maybe even earlier than the end of this show, because I really don't think things are good for her. I mean, she's in constant fear throughout this entire episode. She has this increasingly high paranoia. She's also, there's hints that she's also very much become an alcoholic because of it. And yes, they're not, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal at the moment, but you can already see how this is affecting her. She, similar to how Elliot has really been altered by Angela's death, Dom has really been altered by Santiago's, and it's really, I think it really woke her up in that way. It's really made her realize just how bad of a situation this really is, but also how urgent of a situation this really is, and especially when it comes to Janice, that character. I mean, what a creepy character already. This character is just so threatening, and Ashlie Atkinson, I mean, she's doing an incredible job, essentially kind of doing what Irving did last season, except she's going about it a much different way. The second we meet her, there's just something off about her. Her jokes and things like that are just really weird. The way that she is talking to, like, Dom and her mother, there's just something really off, and that moment where basically she tells her that she is an affiliate for the Dark Army, and that if Dom doesn't do what White Rose wants her to do, her mother is going to be killed immediately, really gets Dom to realize what she's fully signed up for. And of course, you know, she was forced to do this. This isn't something that she wants to do, but she knows what she has to do now. That reality is fully settling in, and sure, she's done this for a few months now, obviously, because there has been a bit of a time jump in this show, But I think more than ever, we're seeing how this is affecting Dom. We're seeing the position that she's in right now, and we're seeing just how hesitant she is to do anything. She knows what the Dark Army is doing. She knows exactly what she needs to expose them for, but she knows that she can't do that because, again, she could end up like Santiago if that ends up happening. She could just get in too deep, and I think because of that, she's got to remain composed, but she's also on edge constantly, and it's just really tragic to see. And again, I just don't see Dom recovering from this. I mean, maybe Elliot's able to reel her in. Maybe she's able to make amends with Darlene. But those two things need to happen before she can get out of this. Because at this point, I mean, she's just so deep into it. And especially with that threat that Janice gave to her, I think more than ever, Dom is just on the verge of being completely destroyed. And you definitely do get to see that here for sure. Grace Gummer, I mean, again, really gets to step up, though. I mean, she's doing some amazing work this season already, and again, I'm really worried for where Dom's going to go, but I'm also really liking where Dom is going. I think she's very much heading in a self-destructive path, like a lot of these characters, and I think that's something we're really exploring here. Like I said, Season 3 wasn't even the peak of it. I think Season 3 was just the beginning, and we're really seeing how these characters are going to self-destruct, and really the only people that could save them are now Elliot and Price. They've become the heroes of this show. They've become the ones that are going to save all of them from this. Even if it seems impossible, they're going to do that. And Price, more than ever, he now has, White Rose now has a bounty to pay. He doesn't care that, White Rose wants him dead. He will do whatever he can to try to avenge Angela's death. And, now him and Elliot have this common enemy, and they also have this common loss, and I think they're really going to bond over this, and I'm really excited to see really where that's going to go. Seeing Mr. Robot on good terms with Elliot is really refreshing, and I'm interested in seeing where they're going to go with that. But characters like Darlene, Dom, even Terrell, I mean, I am just really worried for it. Doesn't really seem like there's a lot of hope within this last season. I mean, White Rose is continuing to get her way no matter what, even things when it seems like things are snowballing for her, like Elliot having this information and him hacking into her thing. She still thinks that he is dead. She still thinks that she doesn't have to deal with him anymore. Obviously, that's not the case, but things are pretty much going her way at this point. But I do think that Price can find a way to make sure that's not the case. I do think there's a way to stop White Rose. I just think they really need to think hard about it. And I think it's actually a really good thing this season is 13 episodes, because there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time for us to see where these characters can go, what they can end up doing, but it also makes me worried considering how we're only one episode in, Angela's already dead. What else could possibly happen? Who else's life is on the line? I mean, no one's really safe at this point. I guess we'll just really have to see where things do end up going. But overall, guys, this was an amazing premiere. I really love where they ended up going with everything. It really did a great job of just showing how important Angela really was to all these characters and how that really does shatter all of the hope within them. What it did for Elliot, what it did to Darlene. I mean, it's just tragic to see, but it also is a really great way to really kick this season into high gear. I mean, the momentum has never been more forward than it is at the moment. The stakes have never been higher, and because that, I think we're in for a really thrilling final season for sure. I love all the espionage stuff as well. I love how the show is actually getting back into that. That's awesome to watch. Aesthetically, I mean, the show is always fantastic, but this episode especially, I mean, just the scene with Freddy, that whole sequence, it reminded me of something from, like, Season 1. It actually mirrored the first scene of Season 1 quite well, and I love the way that they're doing that. I love what they're doing for characters like Price and Darlene and all of them. I mean, a lot of these characters have really changed since the first few seasons, but Price especially, I think there's some really intriguing stuff going on there for sure. Everything we have going on there, combined with just the great script. And I mean, this episode, even though yes, it was tragic, it didn't refrain from being funny as well. There were actually some really fun moments with, like I said, Mr. Robot actively telling us that he fucking hates the audience, he doesn't want anything to do with us, and he's like annoyed by the carolers and things like that. That whole monologue was great. And then the stuff with Freddy as well, before he killed himself, obviously, was actually played up really well. Jake Busey did a really great job. So again, the show, 4 seasons in, is still finding a way to maintain this really dark, hopeless tone, and they're doing a fantastic job with that for sure. But again, it still does have that sense of life to it. They do still have some nice levity in there, which I did really appreciate. All of these elements, though, just really make up what is a truly amazing season premiere of this show. And I am going to give the season premiere of the final season of Mr. Robot, Season 4, Episode 1, Unauthorized, overall, in A. But overall, guys, in my review of the season premiere, the final season of Mr. Robot, let me know if you guys saw this episode overall, left your thoughts on it. It feels so great to be talking about this show again on a weekly basis. I'm very excited to be reviewing all episodes for you guys moving forward. And I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit saddened that this is the final season, but we have a lot to go. We do have a lot to go. There's a lot of story that still is left to be told. And again, I think this episode is any indication, we're in for quite the ride for sure. And I really don't know where they are heading into this final season for sure. I think they have a lot of interesting seeds planted, and I'm really excited to see where it ends up going. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.